Sometimes, the smallest moments carry the greatest weight. A simple interaction, a few words scribbled on a receipt, a tip left behind. What if I told you that one note, written in ink, would change a struggling waitress's life forever? And what if I told you the person who left it was Barron Trump? Before we dive into this incredible story, ask yourself, how would you react if a complete stranger changed your life in an instant? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories that inspire, move, and make you think, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Now, let's begin. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the quiet cafe, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down. The air was rich with the scent of fresh espresso, mingling with the buttery aroma of pastries. But for Lana, the warmth of the cafe did little to ease the exhaustion pressing down on her shoulders. She had been on her feet for hours, her apron stained with coffee splashes, her hands aching from balancing trays and scrubbing tabletops. The day had dragged on mercilessly, each tick of the clock stretching her shift into what felt like an endless marathon. Rent was due in 2 days. Her phone bill was already overdue. And the tips today, hardly enough to buy a meal. She exhaled sharply, tightening her ponytail, as if that simple action could hold her together just a little longer. Just one more hour, she reminded herself. Then, the doorbell chimed, a small sound, but somehow it sliced through the hum of the cafe, snapping Lana out of her autopilot routine. A young man stepped inside, tall, composed, a presence that was effortlessly noticeable yet unassuming. He wasn't dressed in designer labels or anything flashy, just a simple, well-fitted shirt and slacks. But there was something about him, something that made people stop and take a second glance. 2 men followed close behind, their movements smooth, calculated. Security. That was odd. This wasn't the type of place that high-profile people wandered into. Lana's pen hovered over her order pad as her heart did something strange. It skipped, just slightly. Not in recognition, not yet, but in curiosity. Who was he? And why did the air shift the moment he walked in? She straightened her shoulders, pushing the thought aside. Professionalism first, questions later. Taking a deep breath, she approached the table where he had settled, the farthest one, tucked in the corner, away from prying eyes. "Good afternoon," she said, mustering her best smile. "Can I get you something to start?" The young man looked up, and for a fleeting moment, Lana nearly forgot what she was supposed to say. His face was striking, sharp, yet calm. Familiar, but in a way that made her pulse quicken. And then it clicked. Barron Trump. Her breath caught. Of course, she had seen his face before, though only in passing, on news headlines and social media. The son of one of the most talked about men in the world. And yet here he was, sitting alone in a quiet cafe. No cameras, no entourage, just a cup of water in front of him, his fingers resting idly against the glass. What would you do if you found yourself face to face with someone famous? Stay professional or start asking questions? Let us know in the comments. Lana quickly shook off the momentary daze. This was still her job, no different than any other customer. "I'll just have a cappuccino," Barron said, his voice polite but reserved. "And maybe one of those croissants. No special requests, no unnecessary demands. Just simple, straightforward words." "Absolutely. Anything else?" she asked, forcing herself to stay composed. He shook his head. "That'll be perfect. Thank you." His words were ordinary, but his tone carried something else. Kindness, maybe, or sincerity. Lana couldn't quite put her finger on it, but whatever it was, it lingered. She jotted down the order and turned toward the counter, trying to ignore the strange flutter in her chest. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was nerves. Or maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something she would never forget. What Lana didn't know was that this ordinary moment would soon become extraordinary, and by the time she discovered what Barron had left behind, it would be far too late to go back to life as it was before. Stick around, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The hiss of the espresso machine filled the air as Lana carefully steamed the milk, her hands moving on autopilot. But her mind, it was still back at that table. She risked another glance. Barron sat still, his posture relaxed yet poised, his gaze fixed on the street outside. Unlike the other customers buried in their phones or tapping away on laptops, he seemed present, observant, as if he was taking in the world rather than distracting himself from it. Why is that so unusual? She wondered. Maybe it was because most people, especially those with wealth and influence, never really stopped to notice the world around them. But he did, and for some reason that unsettled her more than it should have. Lana shook off the thought, carefully pouring the velvety milk over the espresso, crafting a near-perfect cappuccino. She added the croissant to the tray, straightened her apron, and walked back to the table. She set the cup and plate down gently. Here you go. Barron looked up, offering a faint smile. Thank you. You're welcome. Let me know if you need anything else. She kept her tone professional, but there was something about the way he held eye contact, steady, unreadable, that made her pulse quicken. Not in a way that felt intimidating, just different. As she turned to walk away, she felt it again. That unshakable feeling that she was being noticed, not in the way customers usually saw her, as just another server blending into the background, but truly seen. Lana busied herself wiping down the counter, refilling sugar containers, anything to distract from the strange nervous energy that had wrapped itself around her. This is ridiculous. He's just another customer. Minutes passed, then an hour. The cafe had settled into its usual lull. A few tables remained occupied, but the rush was over. Barron still sat at his, sipping his cappuccino in slow, measured intervals. Occasionally, he'd glance at his phone, but never for long. It was as if he preferred the world outside the screen. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Lana saw him reach into his pocket. He pulled out a pen, leaned over the receipt, and started writing. Her breath hitched. Most customers barely glanced at the bill before scribbling a quick signature. But not him. He wrote deliberately, pausing for a moment as if choosing his words carefully. When he finished, he folded the receipt neatly, tucking it beneath the empty cup. Then he stood, grabbed his coat, and made his way toward the door. As he passed the counter, Lana instinctively straightened. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Barron turned back slightly, met her gaze, and nodded. "Have a good day." And just like that, he was gone. The bell above the door chimed behind him. The cafe returned to normal. Or at least, it should have. Lana swallowed hard, gripping her tray tighter than necessary. Her feet carried her toward the now empty table, but her mind buzzed with a tension she couldn't explain. She reached for the receipt, hands suddenly unsteady. She told herself it was just another bill, another tip, another table to clean. Nothing more. But the moment she unfolded it, she realized how wrong she was. What do you think he wrote? Stick around, because what Lana sees next will change everything. Lana unfolded the receipt with careful fingers, expecting to see a standard gratuity. A generous tip, perhaps, given his background. But what she found made her breath catch in her throat. The number at the bottom was staggering. Not just generous, life-changing. 4 crisp digits, a sum that could erase an overdue bill or put food on the table for weeks. But even that wasn't what made her hands tremble. Above the total, in neat, precise handwriting, was a note. "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." Her vision blurred. She blinked rapidly, trying to process the words. The cafe, the noise, the distant chatter of other customers. It all faded, shrinking into nothing but the ink on that slip of paper. Barron Trump had written this for her. She sank into the chair across from where he had been sitting, gripping the receipt as if it might disappear. She read the words again, slower this time, letting them sink in. They weren't empty. They weren't a throwaway line. They were personal, intentional. A lump formed in her throat. This wasn't about wealth or status. This was about recognition, about someone, a stranger no less, looking at her and seeing more than just a waitress balancing trays and refilling coffee cups. She had been drowning in her routine, weighed down by exhaustion, unseen by the world around her. And yet, somehow, he had noticed. Her hands tightened around the receipt as her heart pounded in her chest. What was she supposed to do with this? Pretend it hadn't happened. Fold the paper away and go about her shift like nothing had changed. As she sat there, overwhelmed, a voice broke through her thoughts. "You okay?" She looked up, her manager standing near the counter, watching her with a curious frown. Lana swallowed hard, nodding. "Yeah, just." She hesitated, then exhaled a shaky laugh. "Just a really generous tip." Her manager raised an eyebrow. "Generous enough to make you look like you've seen a ghost." Without a word, Lana held out the receipt. Her manager took it, scanning the numbers first, her eyes widening. Then the note. When she finished reading, she let out a low whistle. "No way." Lana nodded. "Yeah." Her manager looked at the note again, then back at her. There was a softness in her gaze that Lana hadn't seen before. "That's something else." "I don't even know why he wrote it," Lana admitted. "I didn't do anything special." Her manager studied her for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "Sometimes people just know, Lana. They see what you're going through, even when you think you're hiding it." Lana swallowed past the tightness in her throat. Her manager handed back the receipt. "What are you going to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? She had no idea. Stick around, because this story is far from over. What happens next will take everything Lana thought she knew and turn it upside down. Lana clutched the receipt, her fingers tracing over the ink, as if to make sure it was real. The words kept replaying in her mind, looping like a song she couldn't turn off. "My family has been where you are." What did that mean? Had Barron Trump, someone raised in unimaginable privilege, truly understood what struggling felt like? She wanted to believe it wasn't just a line, that it wasn't just something rich people said to seem relatable. But somehow, she didn't think it was. The sincerity in his eyes, the way he had taken his time writing it. There was weight behind those words. The rest of her shift blurred. Customers came and went, orders were placed, plates were cleared, but Lana felt like she was moving in a different reality. Her hands still worked, her body still carried out the motions, but her mind was stuck in that single moment. By the time the cafe emptied out and she was wiping down the last few tables, the silence finally gave her space to think. What was she supposed to do with this? If this happened to you, would you reach out? Or keep it as a personal moment? Let us know in the comments. Her phone buzzed. A message from her roommate. "You see this? Some guy posted about you on Twitter. Apparently, Barron Trump left you a crazy tip." Lana's stomach dropped. She immediately opened the app, her pulse racing. And there it was. A photo of the receipt. Her receipt. The words. The tip. Blown up on screens across the internet. Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. People speculating, analyzing, twisting something deeply personal into a public spectacle. Her breath came quicker. How had this gotten out? Had someone snapped a picture while she wasn't looking? Had her manager shared it? It didn't matter. It was too late. The moment wasn't hers anymore. Do you think viral moments like this help or hurt people? Drop your thoughts below. Her notifications were exploding. News sites were already running articles. Barron Trump's shocking act of kindness. What his note revealed. Who is the waitress who received a life-changing tip? Random generosity or PR move? Lana felt her stomach twist. Why did people do this? Why couldn't something just be real without it turning into a debate? She didn't ask for this. She didn't want the spotlight. But now, she had no choice. Lana shut off her phone, her pulse still racing. The walls of the cafe, once familiar and safe, suddenly felt suffocating. How had a simple moment turned into this? She had spent the past year feeling invisible, like she was fading into the background of her own life. And now, the entire world was watching her, judging her, speculating on her struggles as if they were some kind of social experiment. Her hands curled into fists. This isn't fair. Her manager approached, concern written all over her face. Lana, are you okay? Lana let out a shaky breath. I don't know. She looked down at the receipt in her hands, the note that had felt so personal just hours ago. The words still mattered. The meaning hadn't changed, but the world had taken it and twisted it into something else. If you were Lana, would you speak up? Or would you let the story die down? Tell us in the comments. She needed to make a choice. She could disappear. She could let the headlines spin their own versions of the truth. Let strangers argue about whether she deserved what she had been given. Or she could reclaim the moment. That night, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she made her decision. The next morning, she reached out to a journalist. Not for an interview, not for attention, but to say one thing. The note wasn't about the money. It was about being seen. And if this story has to be told, let's tell it the right way. And so she did. She spoke, not about Barron Trump, not about the tip, but about kindness. About how one person noticing someone else's struggle could change everything. About how recognition could be more powerful than money. The noise online shifted. The debates faded. The message remained. A week later, when the headlines moved on, Lana was still standing, still working her shifts, but something inside her had changed. She wasn't invisible anymore. Not to herself. She kept the receipt folded in her wallet, not as a reminder of a viral moment, but as a reminder of a single act of kindness that made her believe in herself again. Who can you lift up today? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of human connection.